How does a sword strong enough to destroy so many hollows get broken in half so easily? Well, when you're the MC of aura farming, a lot of crazy stuff can happen. Yeah, today we're covering the story of Bleach, 1000-Year Blood War. I'm gonna be so for real with ya. You need to know everything about Bleach for this one. No LARPing allowed on this channel. Luckily, we already have a video for that, so check it out if you're not up to speed. Anyway, this takes place a couple of months after the Fullbring arc. Ichigo has his powers back, and things are going great until an ancient evil returns. Let's get into it. The very first episode kicks off with a poem called the Kaiser Gesang that will be very relevant later on. The confined Quincy King regains his pulse after 900 years, his mind after 90 years, his strength after 9 years, and finally, we then cut to the Soul Society and Shinigami Research and Development Institute. There, the captain of Squad 12, Mayuri Kurotsuchi, is informed that the Hollows are dying at an alarming rate by his third seat, Akon. This is a problem, because if this keeps happening, then the balance will be disrupted, and the barrier between the real world and the Soul Society will collapse. Mayuri then makes it to the control room and sees a bunch of Hollows disappearing from the map. Mayuri says only one group of people could be doing this, and it's not the good guys. Meanwhile, in Karakura Town, the Soul Reaper, Zenosuke Kurumadani, drops off 2 Soul Reapers. The confident and bossy Shino Madarame, and the guy who's scared of his own shadow, Ryunosuke Yuki. Ryunosuke is worried about the Hollows, but Shino says they'll deal with it and they split up. Ryunosuke is immediately chased down by a spider-like hollow. Ryunosuke runs away from it, only to find Shino's already been taken down by some hollows. Ryunosuke gets one-tapped as well, and he thinks he's done for. That's when a giant slash of energy cuts the spider hollow in half. Ryunosuke gets healed up, and then Shino is healed too. That's when the gang shows up. Orihime Inoue, Yasutora Sado, aka Chad, Uryu Ishida, and the man himself, Ichigo Kurosaki. The gang starts taking down Hollows left and right, and Ryunosuke is stunned. They're not scared at all, and they're super powerful too. After everyone shows off their skills, Ichigo pulls out his Bankai, before nuking an entire block to aura farm with his signature Getsuga Tensho. Getsuga Tensho! Bleach is back, baby! 2 days later, Ryunosuke wakes up in Ichigo's bed. Ichigo's friend walks in with food, as does Shino, who's both happy and mad to see Ryunosuke. Their meal is interrupted when an Arrancar named Asgiaro Ibern shows up through Ichigo's window. Ichigo kicks him out and then faces Ibern in his Soul Reaper form. Ichigo asks Ibern if he's an Arrancar, and Ibern pulls out a Quincy bow. What? Meanwhile, Squad 11's Yumichika Ayasegawa and Ikaku Madarame investigate a part of Rukon, where all the people have vanished. They come to the conclusion that they were abducted, and wonder who did it. Meanwhile, Captain of Squad 1 and leader of the Soul Reapers, Genrisai Shigekuni Yamamoto, is suddenly ambushed by some masked and cloaked figures. Yamamoto doesn't take them seriously, until Chojiro Sasakibe is killed right in front of him. They declare they'll attack the Soul Society in 5 days, before literally disappearing into the shadows. We then see Ichigo fighting Ibern, and he pulls out his Bankai. But before he dies, Sasakibe tells Yamamoto something insane. The enemy has the power to seal their Bankai. We then see Ebern try to steal Ichigo's Bankai, but he fails and gets blasted with a Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo then corners Ebern, but Ebern is sucked away by some shadows, and Ichigo is hella confused. Ebern, along with Ludas and the people who just threatened Yamamoto, meet this so-called Quincy King, Yhwach. Yep, that's how you say it. Yhwach rips Ludas's arm off for arguing with Ebern, and when we see a close-up, he looks kinda familiar. Keep that in mind. Episode 2 starts with Ludas giving Yhwach his report. We then see Ichigo's friends waiting for him, and Orihime says that Uryu genuinely cares about Ichigo, even if he pretends not to. We got a tsundere over here. Ichigo then comes back, and Ryunosuke gets a call on his soul phone. He plays the message on the loudspeaker, and it is grim. The Soul Society was attacked, and a large part of Squad 1 is dead. Later, Ichigo heads out for patrol when he's headbutted by an old friend. It's Nell, and Nell is crying. Something bad has happened in Hueco Mundo. Meanwhile, Yhwach pops Ludas's and Ebern's heads like cherries, before revealing that he has the Queen of Hueco Mundo, Tier Halabel, captured. He's in control of Hueco Mundo. Back with Ichigo, Pesce shows up too, and they fill Ichigo in. While the Soul Reapers have a funeral for Sasakibe, Ichigo learns what happened. After the whole Aizen thing, Haribel took control of Hueco Mundo and brought peace. But they were attacked by Yhwach and his followers, and Haribel got her ass beat. Nell, Pesce, and Dondo Chaka ran away, but Dondo Chaka got captured too, which means they need Ichigo's help. Everyone agrees to go, except Uryu. Quincy's aren't supposed to help Hollows or Arankars.
I can't be helping out Hollows or Arankars.
I know. After all, Quincy's exist to destroy Hollows, don't they?
Ichigo understands, and that's when my goat Kisuke Urahara shows up. He is the resident Hueco Mundo transporter after all, and he gets Ichigo and his friends there. Along the way, Kisuke mentions that all these things happening are probably related, which is bad news. They make it to Hueco Mundo, and it looks like Yhwach's army has absolutely decimated the place. Bodies upon bodies of dead Arankars and Hollows, with a few of them being taken away as prisoners. A man named Kilgeopi takes all these prisoners and says he'll test which ones he'll be recruiting, before he starts stabbing them all. But two prisoners fight back, and they're familiar faces. Loli and Menoli. Kilge beats their asses, but says that they passed the test and asks his subordinates to bring them in. That's when Haribel's underlings, Mila Rose, Sunsun, and Apache show up. They're super strong and they're gunning for everyone. Kilge is impressed by them and offers them a chance to join them. They obviously refuse and the fight goes on. Meanwhile, the squad captains have a meeting and Mayuri drops a bomb on them. The group that's attacking them are none other than the Quincy's. And as Ichigo makes it to the battlefield, he sees that Kilge has taken out all three of Haribel's soldiers. This guy is tough. The next episode starts with Kilge saying he knows all about Ichigo, saying Yhwach listed him as a special threat. Kilge confirms that they're Quincy's, and Ichigo is stunned. After all, the Quincy's were supposed to be extinct. Back at the Soul Society, Yamamoto tells his captains to prepare for war. Meanwhile, Ichigo and Kilge talk, and Ichigo says Kilge is stronger than Uryu. But Kilge says that's not true before he stops talking. He then uses Quincy Volsterndyk, a Quincy technique to bring out one's true power. And it's spooky.
Just so you understand what you're witnessing, the proper name for this form is Quincy Volsterndyk.
Meanwhile, Yuabaha gathers his army. It's time to start their war against the Soul Society. Ichigo fights Kilge, but he's a tough bastard. Even a point-blank Getsuga Tensho does nothing to him. Kilge then babbles about his power and charges up an attack before he's walloped by a monster we've seen before, Ion. Yeah, Mila Rose, Sunsun, and Apache are still alive and kicking, and this monster is their magnum opus. While Ion pummels Kilge, Uryu has figured out these people are Quincy's and tries to find out how that's possible. Uryu's dad, Ryuken, finds Uryu in his library and tells him to drop it, saying the truth isn't here. Meanwhile, a Soul Reaper named Kajomaru explains to Shino and Ryunosuke why the Quincy's and Soul Reapers are enemies. Basically, Soul Reapers kill Hollows the ethical way, sending them back to the Soul Society and maintaining balance, while Quincy's eliminate Hollows, soul and all. If too many Hollows are killed like that, the balance between the real world and Soul Society will break, and the two worlds will join as one. Meanwhile, Uryu finds his grandfather's diary in his dad's office and starts reading it. Kajomaru then tells Shino and Ryunosuke that the Quincy's refuse to cooperate with the Soul Reapers. So, 200 years ago, the Soul Reapers seemingly killed them all off. Ryunosuke asks if the Soul Reapers are really the good guys here, and Kajomaru says that both sides in a war think that they're the good guys. We then see Yamamoto confront Mayuri. Yamamoto knows Mayuri is responsible for the people from Rukon disappearing, and Mayuri says he did it to keep the balance of souls. Yamamoto says that it's Mayuri's fault for not reporting this issue sooner, but Mayuri says that it's Yamamoto's fault. Why? Because Yamamoto didn't kill Yuabaha 1,000 years ago. Oh, they've got history. We then see Kilge get back up from Ion's attack like it's nothing. He then uses Sclave Rai, a technique that allows Quincy's to absorb spirit energy. It's so powerful that he sucks Ion into himself, as well as parts of the spirit energy of everyone that's there. Ichigo brings out his Bankai and starts fighting Kilge. Meanwhile, Yuabaha and his Quincy's launch their attack on the Soul Society, and somehow directly teleport inside the Serete. Soul Reapers start getting blasted left, right, and center. We catch glimpses of Renji and Rukia being stunned before the Quincy named Yugrum Hashwalt announces they're here to purge the Soul Reapers. Episode 4 starts with Yugrum slaughtering more Soul Reapers. Squad 3's Captain Rojuro is facing the Quincy Nanana Najakup, while the monstrous S-Not is confronted by Renji. A Quincy named Bambietta Basterbin faces Squad 7's captain Sajin Komamura, and the other captains line up into action. Renji faces S-Not and is then ambushed by another Quincy, Mask de Masculine. Luckily, everyone's favorite heartthrob is there to help Renji. Squad 6's captain, Byakuya Kuchiki, is here. He sends Mask flying before taking on S-Not. Not can seemingly parry any attack, and a blue mark appears on his body whenever he does that. Byakuya manages to hurt him, but Not then locks in and tanks all of their attacks, including Byakuya's Senbonzakura. While Komamura fights Bambietta, we see Squad 10's captain Toshiro Hitsugaya fighting the Quincy Songdu, and Toshiro freezes his arm. But Songdu pushes forward, while Soifan fights the robotic Quincy BG9. We then see Byakuya unleash his Bankai, despite Renji saying they're not supposed to. And it is cool as ever.
Bankai.
Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi.
Unfortunately, the Soul Reapers made a huge mistake. The Quincy's devices don't seal away their Bankai. They outright steal them. This happens to Byakuya, Komamura, Soifan, and Toshiro, who are all left devastated without their ultimate weapon. Toshiro's lieutenant Rangiku then informs all the other captains of this, and they're shook. Squad 8's captain, Shunsui Kyoraku, has one of his eyes taken out by a Quincy named Robert. But as always, Shunsui doesn't seem bothered, and Renji wonders how they'll beat the Quincy's without their Bankai. Akon decides to contact Ichigo and get him to the Soul Society, but Ichigo is busy fighting Kilge right now. Thankfully, Ichigo distracts him and Urahara shoots a hole through the bastard's heart. Urahara then opens Ichigo a portal to the Soul Society while he analyzes the Quincy's and their ability to steal Bankai. He realizes Ichigo's Bankai is the only one that can't be stolen. That's when Urahara's attacked from behind by Kilge. He's still alive. Kilge then closes Ichigo's way to the Soul Society before trapping Ichigo in a prison made of spirit energy. And he says Ichigo has no way out. The next episode kicks off with Akon trying to figure out why Ichigo isn't here yet, when their building is attacked by Jidanbo, who's being controlled by the Quincy Pepe. Ichigo gets a call from Akon, but all he can hear are screams and explosions. Rukia tells everyone to calm down. Ichigo will show up, and Ichigo does his best to break out. Kilge then gears up to kill Ichigo's friends when he's suddenly sliced in half by someone. Who could have done that? While Ichigo hacks away, Byakuya tells Renji to pay attention to the knot's abilities. That's when Byakuya's hands tremble, and he wonders if it's poison. But Knot says something far worse. It's fear. Knot says that everyone pierced by his attacks experiences fear, and it's their downfall. Byakuya says that he accepts fear and it won't bother him, but he's wrong. Knot says Byakuya is talking about rational fear. That one is easy to deal with, but Knot deals with the primal, irrational instinct of fear, and no man can escape that. Byakuya fights back, so Knot unleashes Byakuya's own Bankai on him, and it hurts him bad. Rukia feels something is wrong with Byakuya and turns her back on the Quincy Meninas Mikalan, which was a bad idea. Knot blasts Byakuya again and again, so Renji tries to use his Bankai, but is kicked into another postal code by Mask, who also breaks his Zanpakuto. Byakuya apologizes to Renji and Rukia as his Zanpakuto shatters. No. Meanwhile, Squad 11's Kenpachi Zaraki shows up to face Hashwalt and Yuhabaha. He killed 3 Quincy's, and he's here for the boss now. While Ichigo keeps trying to break out, Squad 9's Lieutenant Shuhei Hisagi is getting his ass beat by Driscoll. Driscoll announces himself as the man who killed Sasakibe, and is about to kill Hisagi too, until Yamamoto shows up. Driscoll says it's his lucky day, and uses Sasakibe's Bankai on Yamamoto. Yamamoto then has a flashback to thousands of years ago, when Sasakibe was a young man looking to be his right-hand man. Yamamoto told him to acquire a Bankai, and Sasakibe did just that. The Bankai was unrefined but magnificent, and Yamamoto was impressed. Now, in the present, Yamamoto tanks this Bankai and says it's nothing but a cheap copy, before absolutely burning Driscoll to ashes.
Farewell, Chojiro.
He then heads out to the front lines, and every single Soul Reaper is motivated by his presence. Episode 6 starts with Uryu reading his grandpa's diary, and realizing the war between Quincy's and Soul Reapers happened 1,000 years ago, and then the extermination happened 200 years ago. two separate events. Meanwhile, Yamamoto faces Yhwach, who's holding a defeated Kenpachi Zaraki. Yeah, this guy is a monster. Yamamoto faces Yhwach and absolutely nukes some Quincy's who try interfering. Then, it begins. Yhwach and Yamamoto go back and forth, with Yamamoto casting flames with every swing of his Zanpakuto. He does that until Yhwach draws his sword. After that, Yamamoto releases his Bankai, Zanka no Tachi. But this is far from a normal Bankai. After all, he's the strongest Soul Reaper. You see, Yamamoto's Bankai has 4 versions. The first one he uses is East, which sucks all the flames and heat from his power into the tip of his blade, which leads to some crazy power. Yhwach tries to fight back, but gets his sword chopped in half. Yamamoto then releases Zanko no Tachi West, which lights him and his Zanpakuto on fire at a temperature of 15 million degrees Celsius. Bro turned into the sun.
Zanko no Tachi West, Sunjitsu Gokai!
The only thing keeping Yhwach alive right now is Blut Vein. It's the same defensive technique Not was using. Yamamoto then releases Zanka no Tachi South, which reanimates all the people Yamamoto has killed and sicks them on his enemies. That is insane. Yhwach is forced to see the faces of his fallen comrades. This is as much of a mind game as it is an offensive Bankai. Yamamoto then says he knows why Yhwach didn't steal his Bankai. To steal a Bankai, you need to understand it first. And Yhwach is just now understanding the extent of Yamamoto's power. Yhwach breaks free from his subordinates and faces Yamamoto. But Yamamoto says his pain is just a fraction of what Yamamoto feels for his Soul Reapers. He then unleashes Zanka no Tachi North, which is apparently just a freaking nuke. Yhwach is cut down, and Yamamoto puts away his Bankai. That is, until a burst of energy erupts from the Squad 1 barracks, and Yhwach shows up behind Yamamoto. Turns out, a Quincy named Royd Lloyd has the ability to mimic people's personalities and powers. All this time, Yamamoto was fighting him. So, where was Yhwach? Well, he was having a chat with none other than Sosuke Aizen. Not to worry though, Yhwach tried recruiting him and failed miserably.
We'd best not waste time pursuing the same goal either. One of us won't reach the end of that journey anyway.
Yhwach then faces Yamamoto and steals his Bankai. Yhwach was the only one powerful enough to do it, and with the Bankai gone, the Quincy King cuts down the strongest Soul Reaper. Jeez. The next episode starts with a quick animation of 1,000 years ago, when Yhwach and the Quincy's invaded and got their asses handed to them. We then see a very young Shunsui staring at a painting of Yamamoto in his Bankai form, and he asked Yamamoto what that was. Yamamoto said it was a monster that would never appear again, and that if it did, Shunsui would never see him again. Well, it did appear, and now Yamamoto has been sliced in half. All the captains are distracted by his death, and Shunsui loses an eye. Yhwach proceeds to explain to Yamamoto why he lost. It's because he grew soft. Hell, Yhwach didn't even have him listed as a special threat like he did for Aizen and Ichigo. According to Yhwach, peace has made the Soul Reapers soft, and that is why they're going to lose. With that, Yhwach obliterates Yamamoto's remains. The Quincy's then unleash their soldiers, known as the Soldat, on the Soul Reapers, and it's brutal. One by one, the Soul Reapers are taken down, and Ichigo senses the whole thing. Luckily, he finally manages to break out. He grabs Akon, slimes a Quincy, and takes Akon to safety. Ichigo then goes to Byakuya and tells him that Renji and Rukia are safe. Byakuya asks Ichigo to protect the Soul Society, to do what Byakuya couldn't. Ichigo immediately finds Yuabaha and asks him if he's the enemy leader. Yuabaha says yes and no. It's complicated, and Ichigo doesn't have the patience for that nonsense. So, Ichigo and Yuabaha start throwing down. It is a crazy back and forth. But Yuabaha is just stronger. He pins Ichigo down and stabs him in the neck, only for blue marks to show up on Ichigo's neck. It's Blutvein. What? Ichigo gets back up, and Yuabaha says trapping Ichigo was a mistake. After all, Kilge's jail wasn't meant to trap Quincy's. What is he talking about? Ichigo then starts slicing with Getsuga Tenshos, but Yuabaha takes him down again. Yuabaha plans to take him back, but suddenly his time's up. You see, Yuabaha's power is on sort of a timer right now, and Aizen messed with Yuabaha's sense of time, which means it ended sooner than Yuabaha thought it would. Yuabaha and the Quincy's escape into the shadows. Ichigo tries to stop them, but Haschwalth swings his sword and cuts Ichigo's Bankai in half. Whoa. The next episode starts with the captain of Squad 4, Retsu Unohana, and her lieutenant Isane overlooking the healing of Soul Reapers in Squad 4's barracks. And Isane is just a wreck. Ichigo gets informed that Urahara, Orihime, and Chad are alive and well, before Squad 5 captain, and a personal favorite of mine, Shinji Hirako, tells him that Rukia and Renji are out of surgery. Byakuya and Kenpachi are alive too. Rukia's awake, but Renji's out cold. Ichigo talks to Rukia and is glad she's okay now. Ichigo says he didn't do much, but Shinji and Rukia say he drew off Yuabaha, which was more than enough. Ichigo is then summoned by Mayuri to talk about his Zanpakuto, and it's bad news. Unfortunately, while Shikai's can be fixed, once a Bankai is broken, it can never be restored. Mayuri then takes Ichigo away again, but this time it's to meet the legendary protectors of the Royal Palace where the Soul King resides. Yeah, they're going to meet Squad 0. Squad 0 arrives and they're a bunch of goofballs.
Hell yeah, that's right! We're here! Drink it in! We are finally here!
There's the paintbrush-wielding Ichibei Hyosube, the fat and fun Kiryu Hifikune, the cool and goofy rock star Oetsu Nimaya, the many-armed Senjumaru Shutara, and the resident tough guy Tenjiro Kirinji. Squad 0 gets down to business, after a little bit of goofing around. Turns out, they're here to take Rukia, Renji, Byakuya, and Ichigo to the Royal Palace, Soul King's orders. Soifan is mad at them for not helping earlier, but Tenjiro makes it clear that protecting the Soul Society is the job of the 13 court guard squads, and they failed. Urahara then calls Ichigo through Kon. "Oh, hey Kon, how you been?" He tells Ichigo to do whatever he wants, they're okay. Ichigo also hears a familiar voice with them, but more on that in Season 3. Ichigo asks if his Zanpakuto can be repaired, and Ichibei says no. But they can reforge it. So, Ichigo goes off with Squad 0, and good old Kukaku Shiba blasts them off. Her little brother, Ganju Shiba, is there too, and it looks like the Shibas have taken in the Fullbringers after they crossed over into the Soul Society. The Fullbringers? You know, the villains from everyone's favorite Bleach arc. Anyway, Ichigo makes it to the royal palace, and it's glorious.
The Royal Palace.
In the middle is the main palace, and it's surrounded by 5 castles, each belonging to a member of Squad Zero. Up first, they head to Tenjiro's castle, where Tenjiro uses his hot springs to heal Ichigo, Renji, Rukia, and Byakuya. Episode 9 starts with Shunsui telling his lieutenant Nanao Issei some horrible news. He's been appointed captain of Squad 1, and the leader of the 13 court guard squads. I mean, yeah, who else was it gonna be? Anyway, Ichigo is with Tenjiro, and he's all healed up. Tenjiro tests this with a punch, and Ichigo survives, which means he's okay. Renji shows up too, saying that he's all healed up as well, and he also takes Tenjiro's punch. So, Tenjiro sends them both to Kiryo's castle. After they leave, Tenjiro heals his broken hand. Ichigo instinctively blocked and fractured it. Tenjiro is impressed. Meanwhile, Shunsui tells Central 46 he needs 2 lieutenants, before telling them his plan. He wants to help Kenpachi unlock his Zanpakuto. The people of Central 46 say that that'll make Kenpachi too strong, but Shunsui says they don't have a choice. And to train him, Shunsui selects Unohana, or as he calls her, the first Kenpachi.
Captain Unohana, or should I say, the first Kenpachi.
Wait, what? Anyway, Ichigo and Renji make it to Kiryo's castle, where she cooks them a giant feast. Renji and Ichigo feast, realizing that this is to get them ready for their hardcore training. Kiryo then shows up having dropped some pounds from exerting her spirit energy, and she is a total baddie. Anyway, as Renji and Ichigo leave, Kiryo explains that each member of Squad Zero created an aspect of the Soul Society. Kiryo created the whole artificial souls thing, and she used that same concept to infuse Ichigo and Renji's food with immense power. Up next, they're meeting Oetsu Nimaya, the man who created the Zanpakuto. Meanwhile, Kenpachi meets Unohana in the lowest level of the Central Underground Great Prison. She's here to train him, and it's clear these two have history. Unohana reveals a scar on her chest. Kenpachi gave it to her, and she says it aches whenever he speaks. Kenpachi says the same thing about his scar, and they start fighting. After some back and forth, Kenpachi mentions how fighting Unohana for the first time was when he finally understood the joy of battle, and that he wanted to be just like her. But Unohana says he's gotten weaker since then, knocks away his Zanpakuto, and stabs him in the neck. Or does she?
What's the matter? For a moment there, your mind seemed miles away.
It looked like she stabbed him, but he's alive, and he has his Zanpakuto too, almost like a blackout. Kenpachi thinks nothing of it and focuses on the battle. Unohana says that Kenpachi gets stronger every time he's about to die, and that is Unohana's sin. Episode 10 kicks off with Kenpachi wondering what's happening. He keeps blacking out and regaining his consciousness, but he doesn't know how or why this is happening. Turns out, Unohana keeps killing him and then healing him back. We then see why. Kenpachi fought Unohana for the first time when he was a child, and it was the first time they both enjoyed battle. But Unohana was weaker than him, so Kenpachi subconsciously put a limit on his strength so he wouldn't kill her. And that is Unohana's sin, limiting Kenpachi. She plans to kill and revive him as many times as it takes to break that limit, and when Kenpachi starts catching up to her, she unleashes her Bankai, Minazuki. It covers her sword and the surrounding area in blood, which she uses to fight Kenpachi. And the battle is incredible. Through this battle, Kenpachi realizes the joy of fighting is not just to enjoy the battle, but the joy of fighting to win. With that realization, his limits are gone, and Unohana has nothing left to teach him. Kenpachi cuts her down, and she dies in his arms with a smile on her face. After all, she says there can only be one Kenpachi in any era. The former must decide whether to kill or nurture the next one, and she has made her decision. Kenpachi mourns Unohana, but he gained something else too. He finally hears the voice of his Zanpakuto. Speaking of Zanpakutos, Ichigo and Renji go to meet the creator of Zanpakutos in Oetsu, and he's a party animal.
What is that? Ayo, put your hands together and make some noise, cause the boss is in the house!
Oetsu goofs around with them until his assistant Mera shows up and kicks some sense into him. Mera then takes Renji and Ichigo to an abandoned hut, where they fall into a pit full of some strange-looking creatures. Turns out, these things are called Asauchi. Asauchi are issued to every Soul Reaper in the Academy, and the Soul Reaper trains with and nurtures their Asauchi long enough for it to turn into a Zanpakuto. The goal is simple: fight off the Asauchi and get one of them to accept you. 3 days later, Renji does it, but Ichigo fails. So Oetsu sends him packing, right back to Earth. Oetsu wants him to come back, but for that, Ichigo needs to go back to his roots and find out who he really is. The next episode starts with Ichigo standing in front of his family clinic. His dad, Isshin Kurosaki, comes out to greet him, but Ichigo runs off into the rain. Ichigo makes it over to his boss's place. Ikumi Unagiya happily takes him in and yells at him for not coming to her sooner. Ichigo thinks about what's happened, but that's when Isshin visits him in Soul Reaper form. So, Ichigo leaves Ikumi's place and forgets his substitute Soul Reaper badge behind. Isshin takes Ichigo home and finally decides to tell Ichigo the truth about his mom, Masaki Kurosaki. She was a Quincy. We flash back to when Isshin was still captain of Squad 10, and his name was Isshin Shiba. He's related to Kukaku and Ganju. Anyway, Rangiku and Toshiro were his subordinates, and one day he left to investigate some Soul Reaper deaths in the real world. Unfortunately, as with many things at the time, Aizen was behind them. Aizen was cooking up a scheme to make Soul Reapers into beefed-up hollows, and he wanted to find the Vizards too. Isshin, meanwhile, met some Soul Reapers and told them he was here on some business. We then see Masaki having dinner with Ryuken's mom, Izumi Ishida, and Izumi was mad at Masaki for not being a very good Quincy. You see, Masaki's family died, and she was what we call a pure-blooded Quincy, or an Ect Quincy. Izumi took her in so she could marry Ryuken and continue the Ect bloodline, but Ryuken had a problem with that. Ryuken asked one of their employees, Kanai Katagiri, about it, and Katagiri was clearly in love with him, but she said he'd make a fine husband. Anyway, Isshin then got attacked by a Soul Reaper turned hollow, and he was one tough bastard. Masaki sensed this and headed out to help, despite Ryuken telling her not to. Isshin continued his fight with the hollow and was winning until Aizen literally stabbed him in the back. Isshin was now on the back foot. Luckily, Masaki showed up and took the hollow's attention. It was super fast, so Masaki let the hollow bite her before she blew its brains out.
Good boy. Now stay right where you are.
So that's where Ichigo gets his badass from. The hollow then exploded, and Isshin saved her from the explosion. Masaki healed Isshin and told him she's a Quincy, and Isshin just laughed and said he's never met one before. Later, Tosen says the hollow passed something on to Masaki when it was supposed to pass it to a Soul Reaper. But Aizen is excited to see what'll happen. Episode 12 starts still in the past. Isshin reported everything to Yamamoto, but left out the part about Masaki. After that, Masaki and Isshin both couldn't stop thinking about each other. Masaki was then walking home with some friends when she got dizzy and bumped into good old Urahara. He sensed that something was wrong with Masaki. Masaki came home to find out that Katagiri had told Izumi what happened, but only because Katagiri was worried about the Hollow's bite. Sure enough, Masaki passed out, and she had a hollow-like hole in her chest. Ryuken grabbed her and searched for help when he was attacked by a hollow. Isshin defeated the hollow, and Ryuken blamed Isshin for Masaki's condition. That's when Urahara showed up and took them both to his shop. There, he gave it to them straight. Masaki could never go back to the way she was. Basically, Masaki was now half hollow and half Quincy. The only way to stop this process would be with the opposite, a half human, half Soul Reaper. And the only person who could do that is Isshin. Urahara then showed him a Gigai, an artificial body which would allow him to become a half human. The downside, though, was that Isshin's soul would be tied to Masaki's for as long as she was alive, and the curse of hollowification would be passed down to her kids. Oh, and Isshin would lose his Soul Reaper powers. Isshin agreed to this in a heartbeat. After all, she saved his life, and Ryuken is stunned. So Isshin made his way inside Masaki's soul and saved her from the hollow. Oh, that's where Ichigo gets his badass too, I guess. Ryuken left Masaki with him, and he ended up marrying Katagiri. She was Uryu's mom. After that, Masaki left the Ishida family, and Isshin left the Soul Society. Isshin opened his clinic, and they started dating. The rest is history. Isshin then got his powers back when the hollow inside Ichigo woke up, because his power was no longer being used to suppress it. Isshin then tells Ichigo why Masaki died. You see, Masaki should have been more than capable of defeating Grand Fisher, but do you remember the poem from the start of episode 1? After Yhwach was defeated by Yamamoto in the Soul Society, it took him 900 years to get his pulse back. It took 90 more years for him to get his mind back, and it took him 9 more years to get his strength back. And he got that strength by stealing the power from impure Quincy's. Katagiri and Masaki both died because of this, and Yhwach can do this because every Quincy's bloodline can be traced back to him, which means even Ichigo has Yhwach's blood in his veins. Now armed with his true past, Ichigo thanks his dad. He then takes his badge back from Ikumi and says he has to go back. The last episode of Season 1 starts with Mera taking Ichigo back to the Asauchi, and this time, all of them kneel before Ichigo, who walks up to the one he resonates with. And it looks a lot like Ichigo's hollow form. Oetsu smiles and agrees to forge Ichigo another Zanpakuto. Meanwhile, the surviving Soul Reapers all do their best to get stronger. Toshiro returns to the basics of sword training. Captain of Squad 9, Kensei Muguruma, takes Shuhei into the woods and trains him on acquiring a Bankai with the help from his lieutenant, Mashiro Kuna. Meanwhile, Ekon spies on Mayuri's latest experiments, which is a doozy, and Soifang trains by herself. Meanwhile, Komamura talks to his clan and meets Wolfman Clan Elder asking for help. The Elder rejects it, saying his clan will live in the shadows no matter who is in charge of the world. Komamura challenges this, so it's time for them to fight. Meanwhile, Oetsu takes Ichigo to the place where he forges Zanpakutos and begins the process with his helpers. As he forges it, Oetsu asks Ichigo why his Asauchi turned white. The answer is because it's the physical manifestation of Ichigo's hollow powers, which binded themselves to his Soul Reaper powers. Kinda confusing, but it checks out. However, this leads Ichigo to a more devastating conclusion. If this Zanpakuto is his hollow power merged with his Soul Reaper power, Ichigo's original Zangetsu was something else. It was his Quincy powers, which means the old man Zangetsu Ichigo knew and trusted had taken the shape of Yhwach from 1,000 years ago. Holy mind blown! I would like to share an insane tidbit here if you don't mind. So, you remember the first time Ichigo met Zangetsu, and Ichigo asked him his name. In the anime, Ichigo can't hear his name, and in the manga, his name is blocked out. But if you look at the Japanese spellings for Zangetsu and Yhwach, it becomes clear that the author was planning this reveal from the get-go. Insane foreshadowing! Basically, Old Man Zangetsu was Ichigo's Quincy powers manifest. He is Yhwach, and he also isn't. Zangetsu did his best to suppress Ichigo's Soul Reaper powers and make sure he didn't turn into one. But Ichigo chose that path, and Zangetsu eventually gave in. Zangetsu also mentions how every time Ichigo needed help, it was the hollow version of him that helped, not Zangetsu. Wait, he's right, you know. Zangetsu then bids Ichigo farewell, saying he'll no longer be suppressing Ichigo's power. He leaves behind a blue blade which Ichigo grabs, and then Ichigo pulls out his Zanpakuto.
That is your Zanpakuto!
Or should I say, Zanpakutos. Yeah, 2 blades, one for his hollow side and one for his Quincy side. Ichigo makes peace with all the versions of himself, saying he is the blade. Oh, we are so back, baby! The season ends on a bombshell. Haschwalth returns to Yhwach with Uryu. Whatever Uryu read in his grandpa's notes radicalized him, and he is siding with the Quincy's. Never mind, it is so over. Season 2 kicks off with Ichibei telling Ichigo his training is far from over. Meanwhile, at the Quincy hideout, the Silburn, Yhwach makes an announcement to the Quincy's. Uryu is his official successor. This comes as a shock to the Quincy's, who have been serving Yhwach for ages. They all thought Haschwalth was gonna be the successor, and they have a problem with some rando getting the title. We then get to know these Quincy's a bit better. We've met a few of them, like Bambietta, Meninas, Sungdu, BG9, Robert, and Not, but there are plenty more. There's the mohawk-rocking hothead Baz B, who kills Izuru Kira, the psychotic Giselle Joelle, the green-haired and dreamy Candice Catnip, and the nonchalant yellow-haired Lil Toto Lampert. Bambietta kills some hot guy to blow off some steam, while the other girls scold her for doing that. Baz B then throws a tantrum about Uryu and almost gets into a fight with Haschwalth, before the totally cool Askin Naklevar breaks it up. Meanwhile, Uryu is about to drink Yhwach's blood in some ritual and asks why he's Yhwach's successor. Yhwach says it's simple. When Yhwach stole the powers of Quincy's to regain his strength, Uryu survived, which means he's the chosen one. Uryu abandons his past life, drinks Yhwach's blood, and accepts his role as the successor. What are you doing, man? Back in Hueco Mundo, Urahara is testing the Quincy Bankai stealing device, and Orihime and Chad are training. Meanwhile, Ichibei takes Ichigo to a special room where you can only go with the Soul King's permission. His goal? To make Ichigo surpass being a Soul Reaper. While Shinji recruits Hiyori and the rest of the Vizards, we see Rukia and Renji training. And they're both doing well. Byakuya's finally healed up too, and he's ready to get back into action. Meanwhile, Ichigo's friends, Tatsuki, Keigo, and Mizuhiro, are all visited by Shunsui himself. He tells them that Ichigo is undergoing some special training to get more powerful. The problem is, if he gets power that could be harmful to the world of the living, Ichigo would never be allowed to return. And Keigo takes this news well.
Oh yeah, sure, that's easy for you to say!
Luckily, there's a very small chance of this happening, and Shunsui is here to give them tickets to the Soul Society in case it does happen, so they can visit Ichigo. While Orihime and Chad get done training, the entire Tsurete is suddenly engulfed in darkness. Akon looks at the readings and says that the Tsurete has disappeared.
The Tsurete! It's gone!
Yhwach stands inside the transformed Tsurete with Haschwalt and Uryu, and Yhwach then recites the full Kaiser Gesang. The confined Quincy King regains his pulse after 900 years, his mind after 90 years, his strength after 9 years, and the world in 9 days. As Yhwach puts it, these are the last 9 days of the world. Chat, we might be cooked. The next episode starts with Captain Jushiro Ukitake being called over by his squad members. The Tsurete is in big trouble. Meanwhile, Shunsui and Nanao look over the now transformed Tsurete, and Shunsui doesn't seem too surprised. Yhwach then explains what's happening to Uryu. After losing 1,000 years ago, the Quincy's had no place left to hide. So, they hid in the last place the Soul Reapers would expect, inside the Tsurete. Yeah, they used spirit energy to create their Wandenreich in the shadows of the Tsurete. That is where Silburn is. Nakhlevar explains this same concept to Akon and the R&D team, who are shook. While Haschwalt visits Shunsui and says Yhwach wants to end this quickly, Mayuri has found a way to counteract the shadows being used by the Quincy's, which is this.
You Quincy's have been hiding in the shadows all along.
Yeah, Mayuri and Nemu are wearing outfits that are apparently as bright as the sun to prevent any shadows from forming. While Baz B torches some Soul Reapers and faces Toshiro, Soifang's lieutenant Marechio Omaida has to say goodbye to his little sister, Mareo Omaida, when suddenly BG9 shows up. Rangiku and Toshiro face Baz B, who has the power to shoot flames. But by combining Rangiku's ash and Toshiro's ice, they form a layer of protection that Baz B can't penetrate. And then Toshiro blasts Baz B. While Nanao uses a special Kido to hold off Haschwalt, Marechio is getting his ass beat by BG9. BG9 is about to gun him down until Soifang shows up and saves him. Apparently, she's perfected Shunko, the technique Yoruichi used to beat Soifang in OG Bleach. And she absolutely blasts BG9. Nakhlevar then decides Mayuri is too much of a hassle to deal with, and Mayuri lets him go because Mayuri wants to study his spirit energy some more. But Nakhlevar makes sure everyone knows the Quincy's still have the advantage here before he leaves. We then see Baz B breaking out of Toshiro's ice before he actually pierces Toshiro with his fire. Meanwhile, turns out BG9 is an actual robot, and Soifang's attacks have had no effect on him. While BG9 blasts Soifang into the sky, Baz B walks Toshiro down and slices him with fire, making Toshiro fall down. Songdu then shows up and takes over. Apparently, if you stole a Bankai, you get to use it to defeat the captain you stole it from. That's just underhanded and sick. That's when Urahara gets through to Mayuri. He's found a way to take back everyone's Bankai. Oh, and Ichigo's training is still not complete. Episode 3 begins with the Soul Reapers firmly on the back foot. Sangdu tosses Rangiku next to Toshiro and is about to use Toshiro's own Bankai to kill them both. Back with Mayuri, Urahara tells him about his discovery before showing up in person. They go inside Mayuri's lab, where Urahara explains his thought process. You see, an Arrancar's resurrection is basically the same as a Soul Reaper's Bankai, and yet, even though they were in Hueco Mundo, the Quincy's never stole any resurrections. The reason is simple. Quincy's as a people never developed any antibodies or immunity against hollows. Any contact with hollows can prove fatal for them. They can't even turn into hollows themselves. That is why Quincy's kill hollows, because of their fear of dying. And it's exactly how the Soul Reapers will beat them. Urahara has tiny black pills sent to everyone with a Bankai. By touching them, the person absorbs a little bit of hollow power, which hollowifies their Bankai and makes it poisonous for Quincy's. Yeah, my goat is a genius! Sangdu is immediately hurt by the hollowified Bankai, and Toshiro gets half of his Bankai back, while Marechio saves Soifang and gets the pill to her. Soifang's hollowified Bankai stalls BG9 before she gets it back and absolutely blasts him with it. Take that, you clanker. Toshiro then retrieves the rest of his Bankai and freezes Sangdu away before passing out. While Shinji takes down some Quincy's with his Bankai, I love him so much, Shuhei meets up with Ikaku and Yumichika. They're discussing what to do next when they're ambushed by Mask Masculine. Mask starts whooping them, with his partner James ringing a bell to sound the start of their match. On the other side of town, Bambietta is walking with her girls, when suddenly they vanish from behind her. She throws a tantrum and Komamura shows up. It's clear he's way stronger than before. Shinji then tells Komamura to go on ahead. He's got Bambietta. Shinji then uses his Zanpakuto's ability to reverse everything for Bambietta, and it's super trippy. While Ikaku and Shuhei seemingly take down Mask, things are about to get bad for the Soul Reapers, because the Quincy's activate their Quincy Volsterndyk, and Yuhabaha says the Soul Reapers will regret getting their Bankai back. The next episode sees Bambietta catching Shinji off guard, knocking him out cold with one of her signature bombs. Momo shows up to help, as does Komamura. Momo drags him to safety, while Komamura takes on Bambietta. Bambietta makes a whole fuss of wanting to see Komamura's dog face, but when she blows up his mask, Komamura is a human. What? Turns out, Komamura is using the Jinka technique. The process is simple. Komamura offers his heart and in exchange gets an immortal body for a small period of time. Bambietta is horrified when she hears this. She can't fathom throwing her life away like that. But Komamura says he's not throwing it away, he's staking it for the greater good. Komamura then smites Bambietta with his Bankai, and the fight is over.
This can't be.
Komamura then makes his way towards Yuhabaha, but it's too late. The Jinka technique runs out, and Komamura turns into a full-on wolf. At the end, Komamura realizes he did exactly what he had blamed Tosen for. He gave in to vengeance. But Tetsuzeman collects his captain and says he didn't do anything wrong. While Uryu visits Sangdu and BG9, Bambietta is visited by her friends, who are about to do something devious. Over with Shunsui, Haschwalt breaks Nanao's barrier, but she just makes another one. Tough pretty boy. Haschwalt is then summoned away by Yuhabaha, so he leaves. Meanwhile, Shuhei, Yumichika, and Ikaku see James telling Mask to get up, and he does.
He's supposed to be dead!
Mask then beats the three of them before seeing two objects dropping down from above. Mask wants to check them out, but he won't be able to, because Rojuro and Kensei are here to stop him. Two captains who are also Vizards. Mask is in trouble. Oh, and you guessed it, Ichigo is still training. He's made progress though. Now he'll train with Senjumaru. Episode 5 starts with Urahara and Mayuri giving us a status report. Counting all the dead and injured Soul Reapers, they're at 30% of their original strength right now. Mayuri calls Shunsui, tells Shunsui to get his together, and then patches him through to the Soul Reapers. And Shunsui tells them all to gather at the nearest barracks. It's time to regroup. Meanwhile, Kensei activates his Bankai Tekken Tachikaze and uses it to destroy Mask Demasculine. Shuhei tells Kensei to take out James first, but it's too late. James's cries wake Mask up, giving him a buff, and he obliterates Kensei. So, Rojuro cuts James in half before unleashing his Bankai Kinshara Butodan, and it is cool.
What the hell is this?
Rojuro uses the power of music to put Mask through both watery and fiery hellscapes. Mask realizes music is the problem here, so he ruptures his eardrums before blowing a star-shaped hole in Rojuro's chest. No! Mask is about to finish him off when he's stopped by Renji. Yeah, the two dropping objects were in fact Rukia and Renji. Rukia carries the fallen captains to safety, while Renji takes on Mask. James's cheers heal Mask right up, so Renji cuts James's head off. While Rukia drops the captains off with Hisane to heal them, James multiplies, and now there's a bunch of him. They cheer on Mask, who activates his Quincy Volsterndyk and unleashes it on Renji and James. Mask says James will eventually show up again as long as Mask is alive. Unfortunately for him, Renji is alive and well. You see, Renji's training revealed something. Hihio Zabimaru was not his Bankai's true form. Rather, it was only half of it. Ichibei told him this, since Ichibei was the one who named every phenomena unique to the Soul Society. And now, with his help, Renji has unlocked his true Bankai.
You got one dangerous Bankai.
Yeah.
With it, Mask Demasculine is a pushover. Renji kills him without breaking a sweat. With Mask and James dead, Yhwach reclaims their power and then disappears into the shadows. Haschwalth shows up in his place and explains that Yhwach can only absorb their power when he's asleep and resting. He then decides to tell Uryu the truth about Yhwach. The following episode sees Ichigo's training completed, and there's something different about him. You can tell just by looking. He bids farewell to Squad Zero and heads down to the Soul Society. On his way, Ichigo calls Urahara and says it'll take him some time to get down there, but tells Urahara not to worry, he will handle it. Meanwhile, Haschwalth slimes Songdu and BG9, whose souls are then absorbed by Yhwach. Haschwalth says this is a necessary process. Yhwach needs to keep absorbing souls, or else we don't get to hear the rest of it. Meanwhile, Rukia comes face to face with Not, and the battle is on. Not hits her with his fear horns, but it looks like Rukia is unaffected by them. Rukia says that it must be Not's greatest fear, his fear having no effect. You see, Rukia's Shikai Sode no Shirayuki has an interesting ability. Instead of freezing other things directly, it lowers the temperature of itself and its user, as well as everything they touch. Not says fear stems from humanity's objection to death, but Rukia's lowered her body temperature so much, she's already dead. She then freezes Not, and her body returns to normal. But Not isn't done yet. He remembers how Yhwach saved him from the brink of death, and Not's only fear is disappointing his king. So, Not activates his Quincy Volsterndyk and turns into a freakish monster. In this form, he transmits fear through optical nerves, and Rukia gets caught in his fear trap. Rukia is in trouble, until Byakuya saves her. Byakuya then thanks Not. Because of him, Byakuya was able to rediscover the essence of his Bankai. Byakuya then tells Rukia he believes in her, as Not transforms into an even more horrifying monster. Byakuya then says Rukia will be the one to beat Not, and he is not lying. Because, for the first time ever, Rukia unleashes her Bankai, Haka no Togame. Not, ironically, dies afraid, and Byakuya tells Rukia to use her Bankai carefully. It's dangerous for both her and her opponents. They then head out to save the Soul Society. Siblings for the win! The episode ends with Isane and Yachiru getting attacked by a Quincy who can hide his presence after attacking. He hides it so well, Yachiru and Isane forgot he even existed. Episode 7 starts with this man revealing his name. He is Gwenal Lee, and his ability is insane. He can erase his form, his existence, and memories about him from anyone's mind. Unfortunately for him, Yachiru attacks him instinctively and injures him. She's an adorable monster. That's when the Quincy Gremmy shows up, next to the captains Isane was healing. Gremmy's power is just some... Anything he imagines becomes reality. He explodes Gwenal before turning Yachiru's bones into cookies and immobilizing her. Lucky for them, Kenpachi shows up and just starts swinging. Gremmy tries using his imagination on Kenpachi, but he makes sure Gremmy knows this will not be a walk in the park.
Hey, what's with that look?
With that, the fight is on. Gremmy says he won't use his hands, but constantly has to adapt to Kenpachi's insane strengths. Kenpachi realizes Gremmy can't focus on too many things at once, and uses that to get Yachiru back to normal. As Gremmy fights Kenpachi, he gains a thirst for battle and starts going all out. Guns, rockets, he whips it all out, and Kenpachi survives it all. So, Gremmy pulls out all the stops. He imagines a second version of himself, and then he imagines a gigantic meteor coming down to crush the Surete. Gremmy says that even if Kenpachi kills him here, the meteor will still fall and kill everyone. But Kenpachi asks Gremmy where his imagination is, and runs at the meteor. Kenpachi then unleashes his Shikai no Zarashi for the first time, and uses it to cut the meteor in half and explode it. Gremmy is stunned, so he sends Kenpachi into the vacuum of space to stop him. Of course, it doesn't work. Eventually, Gremmy decides to just make himself powerful enough to beat Kenpachi, but his body breaks down. Turns out, only Kenpachi's body can handle that kind of power. Gremmy then shows his true form, a brain in a jar. Even his physical form was an imagination, and Kenpachi watches him crumble away. Even the man who could imagine anything into existence couldn't beat Kenpachi. Episode 8 starts with Kenpachi realizing Yachiru is missing, so he sends his men to find her. That's when Kenpachi is ambushed by the Quincies. Candace, Giselle, Lil Toto, and Meninas, also known as the Bambis, jump an already injured Kenpachi. We get a look at their abilities too. Meninas has straight hands. Candace has lightning powers. Lil Toto can grow an extra mouth from her face that bites stuff, and Giselle can turn anyone her blood touches into a personal servant. Spooky. With the element of surprise, they take out Kenpachi and his men. Rukia senses Kenpachi in trouble, but then she senses something else. Ichigo is here. Ichigo bursts through the barrier and shows up to help Kenpachi. He whoops the Bambis, and Lil Toto says that's why Ichigo Kurosaki is special threat number 1 on Yhwach's list. Candace takes this personally, like really personally, and tries the hardest to get to Ichigo. But when it's all said and done, they can't even scratch him. Even their Quincy Volsterndyk, combined with the extra energy from Sklaverai, are useless. Ichigo's toting his 2 blades, and he shows off what he can do with them. A new move called Getsuga Jujisho, and it is cool as hell.
Getsuga Jujisho!
It costs Candace an arm, but Giselle just heals her up. After that, Baz B, Nanana Najakup, Pepe Wakabrada, and Robert show up too. After some arguing about who'll get the glory of beating Ichigo, they all surround him. It's not looking good. That's when there's a flash of blue light behind Ichigo. Turns out, Yhwach is using Ichigo's path back from the Royal Palace to get to the Royal Palace himself. Mayuri realizes this couldn't have happened without Squad Zero's will. What are they up to? Ichigo rushes to Yhwach and is constantly being attacked by Quincy's. Luckily, Renji, Rukia, Byakuya, Shuhei, Yumichika, and Ikaku show up to clear his path, so Ichigo makes it there, and is stunned to see Uryu. Uryu tells Ichigo to turn back before chucking arrows at him. Chad and Orihime show up to block the arrows, and they all ask Uryu the same thing. How could you? Uryu doesn't respond, and heads off with Yashwalt and Yhwach. But what the hell is he gonna do in the Royal Palace? The next episode starts with Ichigo and his friends dealing with the Uryu thing. They decide that Uryu probably has a good reason for joining the enemy. They trust Uryu enough to hear him out. To do that, they'll need to go to the Royal Palace, and Urahara shows up, saying he can book them a flight. Meanwhile, Byakuya faces Robert, Candace, and Najakup. Rukia and Renji face Baz B, and Ikaku and Yumichika face Giselle, who has Bambietta under her control. Back with Urahara, he has Ichigo, Orihime, and Chad sit in the contraption that'll get them to the Royal Palace. One problem with that, though? They don't have the energy to power it. Luckily, that's when Yoruichi shows up. She and the other Vizards have been busy collecting distortions. They show up wherever the Quincy's travel between their Shadow World and the Soul Society, which means they must harness a lot of power. We then see Ikaku and Yumichika being chased down by Bambi's attacks. You see, Bambi doesn't just shoot bombs. She shoots out spirit energy that turns anything it touches into a bomb. Yumichika and Ikaku are not having a fun time. Luckily, Mayuri shows up, and he has a plan. He tosses little reishi locking devices that delay Bambi's spirit energy, causing the bombs to explode on Giselle and Bambi. Mayuri announces this as his victory, saying the two of them will make fine test subjects. That's when Giselle pulls out the rest of her zombies, and there's a whole lot of them. So, Mayuri pulls out some puppets of his own, and they're a real blast from the past. Why? Because they're all Arankars we've seen before. There's Yumichika's flamboyant nightmare Charlotte, the man who was Espada number 6 for like 2 seconds, Loopy, the Arankar Uryu-bodied Tsuruchi Sandruich, and the super honorable guy Ichigo fought in Hueco Mundo, Dordone. Together, the 4 of them make short work of Giselle's zombies, including Bambi.
Special kill. Beautiful Charlotte Kuhorn.
Seeing this, Giselle decides to pull out her trump card, who just so happens to be Toshiro, a captain under her control? Episode 10 starts with us seeing that an unhinged Toshiro is a menace. He cuts down Ikaku, Yumichika, and Charlotte with no problems. So, Mayuri jumps in, saying he wants to test some drugs on Toshiro for the Sirete. Not very convincing. Toshiro then attacks Mayuri and kills him. Or so he thinks. Turns out, Mayuri has used a drug to trap him in a loop. Anytime Toshiro thinks he's killed Mayuri, he gets sent back to the start of the loop. When that happens 10 times, Toshiro gets paralyzed, and Mayuri injects him with another drug. Some standard Mayuri stuff. That's when Kensei, Rojuro, and Rangiku show up, all as Giselle's zombies. Mayuri has the Arankars deal with them, while he focuses on Toshiro. Meanwhile, Byakuya annihilates the Quincy's he's facing and meets Shuhei, who starts attacking Byakuya. Turns out, the Quincy Pepe can control people with his ability, and he's about to do that to Shuhei. And it's not just people. Pepe can control anything with a soul, which means that when Byakuya blocks Pepe's attacks with his Zanpakuto, it's now under Pepe's control too. Shuhei grabs Byakuya's Zanpakuto and starts swinging at him. Pepe then stabs Byakuya and is about to kill him, but Kensei punches him into a building. Turns out, Mayuri used a drug to turn all of Giselle's zombies into his own zombies. Mayuri then had Giselle stabbed before sending Rojuro and Kensei to help Byakuya. Byakuya is disgusted at Mayuri for using the dead captains like this, but Mayuri doesn't care. Kensei whoops Pepe's ass, and Lil Toto finishes him off just because she doesn't like him, and because he made Meninas punch her earlier. Over with Yuhabaha, he, Uryu, and Hashwalt finally make it to the royal palace, where he faces Senjumaru. Episode 11 starts with a flashback to more than 1,000 years ago. Ichibei visited a younger Yuhabaha and proposed a deal, a non-aggression pact. The Soul Reapers, or Balancers as they were called back then, wouldn't bother the Quincy's, who could continue uniting their empire. But Yuhabaha wasn't having it. Yuhabaha says that Hueco Mundo, the world of the living, and the Soul Society all used to be one and the same. The Soul King separated them, and the Soul King was the one who brought the fear of death to people. Yuhabaha asked Ichibei where peace was in these 3 worlds, before opening his eyes, which had extra pupils. Apparently, he could see everything with these eyes. Ichibei held out his hand and showed Yuhabaha the Soul King's past, as well as his current state, to prove the Balancers were maintaining the world. But Yuhabaha was disgusted and confronted Ichibei. Yuhabaha said something about the Soul King's left arm only giving life and not taking it, before a large hand popped out of Ichibei's hand and fused with Yuhabaha's multiple pupils. Ichibei left, saying Yuhabaha's eyes would be closed for eternity, but Yuhabaha said he was glad his eyes were closed, because he wouldn't have to see his father in such a shameful state. Yes, Yuhabaha, the Quincy King, is none other than the Soul King's son. Holy plot reveal! Back in the present, Urahara sends Yoroichi, Ichigo, and his friends on their way, but not before Ganju Shiba joins them. Meanwhile, after their forces fight a bit, Yuhabaha unleashes Nyanzol Waizol on Senjumaru. Nyanzol can detect and bend any and all attacks coming at him, so Senjumaru turns Nyanzol's clothes into a weapon and kills him. Yeesh. On their way, Orihime says this reminds her of when they saved Rukia, except Yoruichi was still a cat, and Uryu was with them. Ichigo says they'll smack some sense into Uryu and bring him back. Bro low-key loves his friend. Meanwhile, Yuhabaha decides to bring out his big guns. The Sniper Toten Lige Baro, the hooded and mysterious Pernita Parunkajas, the Thor wannabe Gerard Valkyrie, and Nachlevar, Yhwach's royal guards. Pernita destroys one of Senjumaru's puppets before Lige blows a hole clean through her head.
It fell the moment His Majesty arrived.
Lige then shoots down Squad Zero's castles until they find out it was all an illusion created by Senjumaru. Turns out the real royal palace is safe and sound, and Yhwach's royal guards are now trapped in a prison of trees created by Kiryu. Tenjiro and Oetsu join the party too. If they want to get to the Soul King, Yhwach's royal guards will have to get past Squad Zero. Oetsu takes out his Zanpakuto, which he keeps in a jelly-like substance. Oetsu proceeds to cut down Yhwach's royal guards, before explaining that his Zanpakuto is so sharp he can't even keep it in a sheath. Yhwach manages to escape the prison, and he faces Ichibei head-on. Here we go. Episode 12 starts with Hiyori and the Vizards showing up to the Tsurete, only to realize Yoruichi and Ichigo already left for the royal palace. This pisses off Hiyori and breaks the heart of Yushiro, Yoruichi's younger brother. Urahara says he did it for the sake of the Tsurete, but Hiyori hates it. Now, we're gonna get to the fightin', and I have to warn you in advance, this is gonna get confusing. Ichibei faces Yhwach, draws 2 lines, and says Yhwach will be stopped between them. Yhwach says Ichibei will die 3 steps short of that, and the fight is on. Ichibei uses his big-ass brush to write things, and he sends Yhwach flying, before stealing Yhwach's voice. But Yhwach takes his voice back before attacking himself to get back next to Ichibei. Meanwhile, Kiryu's prison breaks, so she just strengthens it. Uryu takes on Senjumaru and Tenjiro takes on Hashwat. Meanwhile, Nachlevar gets back up. He's still alive. In fact, he can't be killed. Nachlevar's ability is weird. He can analyze the lethal dose of anything in a person's body and then adjust the dosage. For example, he calculates how much blood it would take to kill Oetsu. Nachlevar then drinks his own blood, which increases the amount of blood in Oetsu until he drops dead. But Squad Zero is about to make a comeback. Senjumaru totally stops Uryu's attacks, calling them gentle raindrops. Ouch! Tenjiro takes Hashwalt head-on and cuts the blonde bastard. Meanwhile, Oetsu gets back up and cuts himself, releasing the extra blood. Tenjiro shows up with his red water to heal Oetsu, who then cuts Nachlevar down again. Meanwhile, Ichibei is fighting Yhwach, and we finally learn his ability. Ichibei's brush doesn't cut things, it cuts names. Ichibei cuts Yhwach's arms, which look the same, but Yhwach loses half of his strength in them. Ichibei says he cuts Yhwach's arms to just R, half the name, half the strength. He then cuts Yhwach, saying his name is just Yuha, and that now he has half of his power. Back in the Tsurete, Giselle heals herself using Bambi before joining up with Lil Toto. Yhwach looks done for, with his back against the wall, so he pulls out his trump card, Oshwalen. It's the same technique Yhwach used to gain his strength back, stealing the powers of other Quincy's. We see a bunch of Quincy's get their powers stolen. Giselle and Lil Toto manage to avoid it, but Meninas and Candace get cooked, as does Basby. The resulting power is so big, Yhwach annihilates Kiryu's prison. Not only that, but all of his royal guards, as well as Uryu and Hashwalt, get a massive buff. Squad Zero is in trouble. The episode ends with Captain Jushiro showing up and meeting Shunsui. Jushiro's been preparing something called the Kamikake, and he says he's completed it. Oh, that doesn't sound ominous at all. The last episode of Season 2 starts with Oetsu having a hole blown through him by Li Jie. Li Jie's sniper isn't an ordinary weapon. Instead of shooting bullets, it unleashes a single, unstoppable force that penetrates everything between the gun and the target, which means it can't be blocked by anything. But Senjumaru just grabs Oetsu and stitches him back to normal. Kiryu makes another prison, and the fight is on. Senjumaru fights Gerard. Kiryu takes on Pernida, Oetsu is fighting Lily, and Tenjiro is up against Naklevar, and Squad Zero has the upper hand. Meanwhile, Ichibei releases his brush's true form, Ichimonji. The power is simple. Ichibei douses his target in black ink, and whatever is cut by this black ink loses its name and its power. This happens to Yuhabaha's sword. Yuhabaha can't say its name anymore, and Ichibei says its power is gone too. Back with Squad Zero, the tables are flipped and they start getting their asses beaten. Pushed up against a wall, Oetsu says they haven't used their full power yet. With that, Kiryu, Tenjiro, and Oetsu commit seppuku. They did this to break the oath sealing their power, which means Senjumaru is at full power now, and she releases her Bankai. And it's trippy. Senjumaru uses her cloth to trap each member of the royal guards in their personal hell. Li Jie shoots at mirrors that deflect his shots back to him. Naklevar gets sealed with metal spikes. Pernida is dragged into black sand. Gerard is frozen like an icicle. Haschwald gets put in a literal fiery hell. And Uryu gets his power drained by the Quincy's logo. Back with Ichibei, he tells Yuhabaha that his power allows him to control all instances of the color black in this world. Ichibei then splashes Yuhabaha with black ink, taking away his name and his power. Ichibei then releases his Bankai, which lets him give a new name to anything Ichimonji paints over. Ichibei names Yuhabaha Black Ant and sends him flying downwards, away from the royal palace. Looks like the Quincy's are done for. Season 3 kicks off with things looking grim for the Quincy's, until Yuhabaha finally opens his eyes. Ichibei's ink and seal peel off Yuhabaha as if they were nothing, before he stabs Ichibei. Haschwald explains that Yuhabaha had to wait for 9 years of strength to pass before opening his eyes. His strength would have been beyond control, but now they're up. Yuhabaha has his multi-pupiled eyes back, and he's regained his true form as the Quincy King, the Almighty. Yuhabaha's awakening buffs Uryu too, who gets up and starts fighting Senjumaru, only to be overwhelmed, trapped, and pierced by her needle. Meanwhile, Ichibei says Yuhabaha still hasn't won, and unleashes all the black in his control to beat Yuhabaha, only for him to completely counteract it. You see, Yuhabaha's power lets him see everything, and any power Yuhabaha can see has no effect on him. With that, Yuhabaha announces his name and explodes Ichibei.
My name is Yuhabaha.
Meanwhile, Uryu's power awakens again, and he somehow traps Senjumaru in her own Bankai before he shoots her with an arrow, taking her down. The rest of Yuhabaha's royal guards show up and kneel before Yuhabaha as he makes his way to the Soul King. Squad Zero is down, and Yuhabaha finally faces his greatest enemy after 1,000 years. His father, the king of all 3 worlds, the Soul King. Ichigo and his friends make it to Ichibei's dead body, and Ichigo hears Ichibei's voice asking Ichigo to say his name. Saying it lets Ichibei heal himself back, but it'll take him a while to restore his power. Ichibei then asks Ichigo to stop Yuhabaha. He's the only one that can. Ichigo and his friends rush over, but it might be too late, because Yuhabaha just stabbed the Soul King. Oh, and Shunsui pays a visit to Aizen. The next episode starts with everyone, and I mean everyone, feeling the effects of the Soul King being attacked. Yuhabaha is about to finish the job when Ichigo and his friends show up to stop him, but he already knew they would. Yhwach and Ichigo then start fighting, and it's clear Ichigo's training made him a monster. He goes back and forth with Yhwach before landing a giant Getsuga Jujisho. Ichigo says the fight is over, but Yhwach says that it hasn't even begun yet. He wasn't using his eyes, and when Yhwach uses his eyes, it's not even close. He beats the brakes off Ichigo and evades his every move. After all, he can see it coming. Yhwach then sends Ichigo flying, and he falls in front of his friends. This is bad. Back in the Sarete, tremors are shaking everything. The captains and lieutenants are gathering their bearings. Jushiro is healing Kenpachi, and Urahara is trying to figure out what the hell is happening. Ichigo gets back up and faces Yhwach while Orihime heals him, but we see Ichibei, and he says it's useless. They can't beat Yhwach. Meanwhile, Renji, Rukia, Shinji, Momo, Soifon, and Marechiyo make it to the R&D lab and ask Urahara what is happening. Back with Ichigo, Yoruichi tries attacking Yhwach but fails. Yhwach then reveals the Soul King with his sword stuck inside him. Ichigo pulls the sword out only for the sword to take control of his arms. You see, Ichigo has Quincy blood in his veins, and Yhwach says that Ichigo's Quincy blood will never forgive the Soul King. Ichigo watches in horror as his own hand cuts the Soul King in half. Yhwach explains that this was Ichigo's destiny. The Soul King could only be cut down with someone who had the powers of a human, a Quincy, a Soul Reaper, a Fullbringer, and a Hollow. And that someone is Ichigo. Tremors go through all three worlds as Urahara figures out what happened. Yhwach then asks Ichigo to join him and watch the end of Soul Society. Dude. With the Soul King gone, there's nothing holding the three worlds together. So, Jushiro shows up at the R&D department, saying he'll take the Soul King's place, before chanting to a being named Mimi Hagi. Turns out, when Jushiro was a child, he was sick and on the verge of death. So, Jushiro's parents offered his sick lungs to Mimi Hagi in exchange for a long and prosperous life, and it worked. After that, Jushiro was fine. Sure, he'd cough up blood every now and again, but he was strong enough to join the Soul Reaper Academy, where he met Shunsui for the first time, and they instantly became best buddies. Jushiro then told Shunsui about Mimi Hagi, and Shunsui tells him about a rumor of how one of the Soul King's body parts fell into the Soul Society. Mimi Hagi is just that, the Soul King's right arm. Back in the present, Rukia begs Jushiro not to do it, but Jushiro reminds her that there are two battles, one to protect lives and one to protect honor. Jushiro then sacrifices all of his organs to Mimi Hagi and becomes the embodiment of the Soul King's right arm, and it is not pretty. Meanwhile, Shunsui gets down for a chat with Aizen. While Ichigo and his friends fight Yhwach, Orihime tries to heal the Soul King, but it doesn't work. That's when Mimi Hagi grabs the Soul King's pieces, stabilizing the three worlds.
The Soul King.
And for the first time, Yhwach acts surprised. He didn't see this coming, which means he can't see everything. Back in R&D, Soifong says that this stabilization will only last as long as Jushiro does, which means they need to find a way to stabilize things while he's still alive. Meanwhile, Shunsui unlocks Aizen's left eye, mouth, and ankles, and asks Aizen to accompany him to the Soul Society above. One of the guards with Shunsui tries restraining Aizen and ends up getting killed. Aizen has no interest in helping the Soul Society, but Shunsui convinces him that they have a common interest. Episode Episode 4 starts with Yhwach realizing why he didn't see this coming, because Mimihagi is part of the Soul King himself. Yhwach says the left arm of the Soul King controls advancement, while the right arm controls stillness. Ichigo holds Yhwach off, while Yoruichi tries to seal the Soul King. Unfortunately, Uryu shoots Yoruichi in the back and stops the sealing. Yoruichi then tries attacking Yhwach, but Parunkagus shows up behind her and twists her arm with his weird power before Yhwach blasts her away. Yhwach then pulls off Mimihagi, and Ichigo faces Uryu. Uryu confirms he's siding with Yhwach and warns Ichigo and his friends to stay down. Ichigo doesn't know how to stay down, so he fights Uryu, and it is epic. Back and forth, Ichigo and Uryu launch attack after attack. Ichigo gets the upper hand, but instead of killing Uryu, he asks him why. Why would he do this when they're friends? And Uryu says it's simple, because he's a Quincy and Ichigo is a Soul Reaper. Uryu then unleashes his Quincy Volsterndyk. He's serious, alright. Haschwalth watches as the two friends fight. Meanwhile, Orihime, Chad, and Ganju fight the rest of Yhwach's royal guards, but they're barely putting a dent in them. All the while, Jushiro is sacrificing his life to keep the three worlds stable. Ichigo and Uryu's battle continues, and Ichigo says Uryu's reasoning is but Uryu says he doesn't care. All through history, it's always been Quincy blood that was shed, and he won't have it anymore. All the while, they exchange powerful attacks.
Stand and stop!
Ichigo then hesitates, and Uryu blows a hole in his chest, sending him falling. Gerard congratulates Uryu from above, and the episode title explains it best. He's the betrayer. Meanwhile, Yhwach overpowers Mimihagi and uses his royal guard's power to cut the Soul King free. Yhwach then absorbs the Soul King, and now he's got a lot of eyes. Oh no. The following episode kicks off with an enormous amount of eyed little monsters spreading from Yhwach and making their way down to the Soul Society. The captains and lieutenants can't stop them, but one man can. Rukia looks on in horror as she sees Aizen crushing the little monsters with just his spiritual pressure. Now that's aura. Everyone except Shunsui is disgusted. How could he set this monster free? But Shunsui says honor won't save the Soul Society. They're just gonna have to deal with it. Everyone then runs into the R&D lab while Aizen nukes the little monsters.
Kurohitsugi.
Urahara says Aizen is somehow stronger than when he fought Ichigo, which is insane. The Soul Reapers discuss a way to get to the royal palace, but Aizen says he'll just shoot it down for them. Unfortunately for Aizen, Mayuri is controlling the range of his spiritual pressure, so he can't do that just yet. That's when Aizen is attacked by Najakup, who shows up with Baz B, Lil Toto, and Giselle. Najakup starts yapping about fighting until Baz B shoots him in the back. Yeah, because of the Oswalin, these guys are done with Yhwach and agree to help the Soul Reapers in exchange for a ceasefire. They agree, and Shunsui calls all available Soul Reapers to the R&D department. He's gonna need their spiritual pressure to build a bridge to the royal palace. Everyone gets there, including Kenpachi, who's still looking for Yachiru. Shunsui then gives a rallying speech, and it works. Everyone is fired up. He will never admit it, but Shunsui is a great leader. The rest of the Vizards then show up, and everyone gets ready to head to the royal palace. Aizen has a chat with Shunsui, and he's pissed off. He sees the Quincy's and Soul Reapers working towards a common goal, and then shifts his focus. He thinks about how ironic it is that Ichigo, who stopped Aizen from getting to the Soul Society, ended up getting there before Aizen, and Aizen hates him for it. Speaking of Ichigo, he wakes up all healed. Orihime Hajime healed him and everyone else, and Yoruichi says it's time to plan a counterattack. Yhwach is on break right now. Controlling the Soul King's power is no joke. Ichigo asks how they'll get back up there, and Yoruichi says that won't be a problem. She then asks him to open it, and a portal opens. The man who helped Ichigo's friends in Hueco Mundo comes out, and it's none other than Grimmjow. The next episode starts with the buildings around the R&D department starting to unravel. They're running out of time. Meanwhile, Ichigo meets Grimmjow and Nell, who can now change between adult and child thanks to a bracelet Urahara made. Grimmjow is aching for his rematch with Ichigo, but it'll have to wait. We then see Yoruichi summon more familiar faces, the Fullbringers Riruka and Yukio. To make a long story short, Riruka and Yukio's abilities are gonna let Ichigo and his friends launch a sneak attack on the Quincy's. Back at the R&D department, everyone's spirit energy isn't enough to open the gate to the royal palace, so Mayuri brings out the spirit pressure amplifier because plot convenience, I guess. And with it, the gate is finally opened. While Yoruichi plans the surprise attack with Ichigo, Yhwach's royal guards finally see his new power, and Nakhlevar is freaked out. Yhwach tears some up before saying that he'll rebuild things now, starting with the royal palace. Riruka and Yukio decide to stay behind in case they need an emergency exit, and Ichigo steps out to launch the surprise attack. At the same time, Shunsui, the Soul Reaper's heavy hitters, and the Quincy's make it through the gate. But when they all get there, the royal palace is gone, or rather, it's been changed. Yeah, Yhwach rebuilt the whole damn thing to his liking, which means the good guys have no idea where the hell they are or where Yhwach is. Lucky for them, Yhwach creates his big-ass castle right in the middle of everything, so they have a target now. We then see Yhwach tell his royal guards that this will be their stronghold in the new world, and Haschwalt says they'll exterminate all the enemies. It's about to go down. Episode 7 starts with Baz B, Lil Toto, and Giselle peacing out. They're not interested in following the Soul Reapers, so Shunsui gives the order and they all head out. Meanwhile, Nemu and Mayuri show up in a different part of the place. Mayuri didn't want to be bothered by everyone and their morals about his experiments. Kenpachi, Yumichika, and Ikaku show up behind him, and poor old Hanataro Yamada gets dragged into it too. The Squad 11 members head off, while Mayuri and Nemu head out too. Ichigo and his group are moving too, and Grimmjow spots Nakhlevar, so Grimmjow starts chasing him alone, even though Ichigo disapproves. Grimmjow catches up to Nakhlevar, but gets poisoned by him, so now he can't move. Uh-oh. We then see Lige start picking off Shunsui's group one by one, and it is chaos. While Shuhei and Marechio are down, Renji comes up against Uryu, and after he confirms Uryu is the enemy, the fight is on. Both of them are way more powerful now, and the fight is awesome. Renji's Bankai lets him overpower Uryu, and he launches an attack point blank. But Uryu survives thanks to Blut Vein and unleashes his Quincy Volsterndig. The fight continues, and Uryu looks like he's got the upper hand this time, but Renji outsmarts Uryu and traps him before unleashing an absolute bomb on him. Uryu is cooked, laying on the floor, but he's alive, and that was Renji's mistake. He uses the Sclave Rai to power back up before trapping Renji in Feeder Zwinger. It's a technique that drains spiritual pressure, and Renji is sucked dry. Renji tries launching one last attack, but Uryu pierces a hole in his chest, and Renji is down. Uryu then tells Renji why he lost. Renji wasn't trying to kill Uryu. Renji didn't know Uryu's powers, and finally, because Renji is a Soul Reaper. I'm starting to think Uryu is actually with the bad guys, chat. The next episode starts with Lige watching the Soul Reapers like a hawk. Meanwhile, Kenpachi and Mayuri come face to face with Parunkagus. Kenpachi attacks, gets his right arm hurt, and cuts Parunkagis's head open. But Parunkagis just heals back up. Who the hell is he? Kenpachi's arm then starts twisting like crazy, and he has to cut it off. Mayuri has Nemu bandage Kenpachi up, and Kenpachi responds by immediately attacking Parunkagis again. This time, Kenpachi gets his legs twisted too, and is about to die until Mayuri paralyzes Kenpachi by stabbing him. Mayuri then figures out Parunkagis's power. He uses his nerves to penetrate other people's nervous systems and just do crazy. Mayuri throws some acid on Parunkagis and calls it a day. He thinks this battle is over, but Parunkagis does not want to be an experiment, so he reveals his true form. Parunkagis is the Soul King's left arm.
What on earth?
Mayuri is super happy to see this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to experiment with something so unique. Parunkagis then just starts attacking, and Mayuri dodges all of them. Parunkagis starts controlling rubble with his nerves, and this excites Mayuri even more. Parunkagis manages to trap Mayuri, but he gets out unharmed and floats above the ground. If Parunkagis's nerves can't touch him, they can't control him. Mayuri cuts off one of Parunkagis's fingers to take back as a test subject, but it grows into a hand itself. Parunkagis breaks off another finger, and now Mayuri is facing 3 hands. So, Mayuri unleashes an altered version of his Bankai, which is as sick as ever. He releases a giant baby with 70,000 layers of nerve endings. Parunkagis tries attacking, but it's useless, and the baby eats Parunkagis up. At no point do I ever feel like I'm rooting for the good guy when I watch this sick bastard. The next episode starts with Mayuri laughing until Parunkagis escapes. Meanwhile, Shunsui decides to take the fight to Lige and gets shot in the chest. Or so it looks like, because Shunsui then shows up behind Lige and cuts off his sniper's barrel. Bleach viewers already know this. Shunsui's Katen Kyokotsu turns children's games into reality, and he uses them to attack his opponents in unique ways. What Shunsui just did was basically red light, green light. He used an illusion to confuse Lige, then snuck up behind him. Lige says Shunsui shouldn't have explained it to him, but Shunsui likes playing fair. Nanao then tells everyone to go on ahead. She'll stick with Shunsui. Meanwhile, Shunsui uses Kageyoni to attack, but Lige dodges and blows a hole in Shunsui's foot. The Quincy's have all the data on the Soul Reapers, but the Soul Reapers know nothing about them. Shunsui then goes on the offensive and manages to stab Lige, but it does no damage. You see, Lige's power doesn't just let him pierce anything, it also makes him impervious to any damage. But that only happens when he's opened both eyes. He keeps one closed to balance things, but Shunsui's too dangerous. Not just that, but Lige unleashes his Volsterndig too.
Zillion!
And he blows 3 holes in Shunsui. Shunsui makes a run for it, still calm as ever. His back is against the wall, so he finally does it. He unleashes his Bankai. And it's a doozy.
Katen Kyokotsu, Karamatsu Shinju.
Shunsui faces Lige and explains his Bankai. It works in 4 different acts. Act 1. All the damage Lige inflicted on Shunsui is reflected back onto him. Act 2. Lige is overcome with regret for hurting his partner and suffers an incurable sickness. Act 3. Lige accepts his fate and drowns into icy waters. While Lige is crashing out about this, Shunsui sees the human form of his Bankai, a lady with an eye patch he calls Ohana. Ohana complains Shunsui doesn't play with her anymore, and Shunsui apologizes. Lige screams at Shunsui, so he shows Lige the final act, and he cuts off Lige's head.
Itokiri basami chizome no dobue.
An injured Shunsui then rests his head in Ohana's lap. He won. Episode 10 takes us back to Mayuri, where Parunkajas escapes. Parunkajas then evolves its speech pattern, saying it's always been a Quincy before shooting arrows laced with nerves. Mayuri loses an arm and is in a tight spot, so Nemu jumps in and saves him, sacrificing an arm of her own. Mayuri saves her right back and then screams at her for jumping in without any orders. Nemu apologizes and it's clear her backstory is messed up. Mayuri and Nemu then heal themselves before jumping back into battle. Mayuri has a plan. He'll use an anesthetic to make Parunkajas's nerves on the ground ineffective, and Nemu will stab him with a chemical that'll kill him. Unfortunately, Parunkajas just cuts off his infected finger before evolving his speech pattern even more, and now Nemu is in big trouble. We then see Nemu's backstory. You see, Mayuri's dream was to create a person from nothing. It was called Project Nemuri. Nemu was the 7th entry in it and the only success. Mayuri used to call her Nemuri number 7 and she loved that name, but then he stopped calling her that and Nemu wondered why. Ekon suggested it was because Mayuri was embarrassed. After all, Nemu was living proof of Mayuri's greatest dream come true. In the present, Nemu saves Mayuri again, and Mayuri is mad. But Nemu says her purpose is to protect Mayuri. Mayuri says her purpose is to grow, so Nemu says she'll show him how much she's grown before using her soul as a source of power, blasting Parunkajas to pieces.
Ikon Jurinju!
But it doesn't work. Parunkajas just stabs her with his nerves and blows her to smithereens. Mayuri is devastated, and that is when he is visited by Arankar scientist Zaya Leporo. In his head, Zaya Leporo mocks Mayuri for being sad over an experiment, saying it's pathetic to think he achieved perfection with Nemu. Asshole? And Mayuri agrees with him. Parunkajas just starts eating up Nemu's remains, and Mayuri lets him eat everything except her brain, and that is Parunkajas's downfall. You see, Nemu had a gland in her body that continuously divided her cells, allowing her to grow. This was controlled by her brain, but Parunkajas didn't eat her brain, which means his cells start dividing uncontrollably and he explodes, dying for good this time. Mayuri then drops down too and is carried away by Yumichika and Ikaku. Mayuri directs them to 2 life-preserving pods, which have turned Rangiku and Toshiro back to normal. Yumichika and Ikaku stuff Kenpachi in one and Mayuri in the other, before thanking him for saving Kenpachi's life and heading out. Mayuri holds Nemu's brain, and he's proud. He managed to create a being that can evolve on its own, and he can't wait to rub it in Urahara's face. The episode ends with Lil Toto and Giselle talking on the Soldat, while Baz B faces Hashwalt, and it's clear they have some history. The following episode starts with a flashback to Shunsui as a kid. He was watching his big brother Shunzan Kyoraku talking to his love interest Isuzu Issei, and Shunsui making fun of how smitten his brother was. Isuzu gave Shunzan a hairpin and kept one herself for romantic purposes. In the end, Shunsui is about to talk to Ohana when Lige shoots a hole through his stomach. Yeah, the bastard is alive, and he takes the form of some biblically accurate bird angel thing. Shunsui can't believe it, but in the most nonchalant way possible. Ohana tells Shunsui to give up. She'll carry him to safety while he sleeps. Shunsui dozes off, but is woken up by Nanao. Nanao tells Shunsui to hand her Zanpakuto over. She knows the promise Shunsui made to her mom, but he has to break it. So Shunsui agrees to give Nanao her Zanpakuto back. What is going on here? You see, Izusu was Nanao's mom, and she was married to Shunzan, which makes Shunsui her uncle. The Issei family was a female-led family, and they had a curse. Every man who married into the family would die a young death. Isuzu believed this, so she married into Shunzan's family to break the curse. But it didn't work. Shunzan died, and Isuzu had to return to her family. Isuzu then gave Shunsui the Issei family's Zanpakuto. She believed it it was the source of the curse. But since Shunsui is the king of children's games, he hid it away with hide and seek. But now, the sword is back with Nanao, and she faces Lige. Nanao pulls out Shinken Hakyoken, the Zanpakuto with no blade. You see, the Issei family didn't really do Zanpakutos. Only one Zanpakuto was passed down through generations. Shunsui tried to hide the fact that he was Nanao's uncle, but she figured it out when she was assigned to Shunsui's Squad 8. After all, Shunsui wore Isuzu's kimono and hairpins. Total softy, this guy. And now Nanao gets to use her Zanpakuto for the very first time. Nanao cuts off Lige's arm, but he pushes her back and charges up an attack. It's the first time Nanao is fighting with a sword, and she's terrified. Shunsui remembers how Isuzu was executed for losing the Issei's Zanpakuto, and how he always blamed himself. He wants Nanao to free him from that burden, so he shows up to calm her down. With Shunsui's support, Nanao uses Shiken Hakyoken's true power, reflecting the power of a god, and it works wonders. Lige dies and Shunsui commends Nanao. Shunsui then says he needs a break. After all, he's got more holes in him than Swiss cheese. Episode 12 starts with another flashback, but this time it's about how Baz B and Haschwalt met as kids. Jugram sucked at using his bow, but Baz B was already using Quincy arrows. Haschwalt couldn't do all that, and he didn't have any friends or family either, just one abusive uncle. So Baz B gave Haschwalt the rabbit he caught, announced Haschwalt as his squire, and headed off. While the two fight in the present, Baz B mentions something interesting. When Yhwach sleeps, his powers are transferred to Haschwalt, and he plans to end Yhwach's power with Haschwalt. We then see more of their past. Baz B's clan was massacred by Yhwach and his Quincy's, back before Yhwach lost his eyes. The resulting fire burned the forest and killed Haschwalt's uncle too. They were both kids with nothing left, so they decided to team up and get stronger. Why? So they could get revenge on Yhwach. For the next 5 years, Haschwalt and Baz B lived together, survived, and trained like madmen. Baz B was super talented as a Quincy, but poor Haschwalt couldn't even collect spirit energy or create a bow. But Haschwalt worked hard, so Baz B never abandoned him. One day, Yhwach's men announced that he would form a new squad called the Stern Ritter, with the explicit purpose of invading the Soul Society. Baz B and Haschwalt rushed over, and Baz B challenged a Quincy officer to prove his strength. That is when Yhwach showed up, and everyone was literally floored by his spiritual pressure. Everyone except Haschwalt. Yhwach then said he'd been looking for Haschwalt. Why? Because Haschwalt was his other half. What? Baz B was mad. He was the one with all the talent, and he'd worked this hard to get close to Yhwach. So why didn't Yhwach choose him? Haschwalt asks the same question of Yhwach. Well, it turns out Haschwalt is the same as Yhwach. He can't use Quincy powers himself. He can only give them to others. Yhwach figures out how to take back those powers and use them, something he says Haschwalt never will. Regardless, he takes Haschwalt in as his advisor immediately. Yhwach tells Baz B the entire reason he became so strong is because Haschwalt was making him stronger unknowingly. And just like that, Baz B is left behind. It took Baz B 3 years to get into the Stern Ritter after that, and he kept challenging Haschwalt to a fight, but Haschwalt turned him down every time. And seeing how Haschwalt is whooping Baz B's ass right now, it's probably a good thing. Haschwalt cuts off one of Baz B's arms before Baz B unleashes everything he's got and gets cut down.
Burning full finger!
Baz B walks over to his old friend and says he doesn't feel bad about losing before he collapses. Damn. And Haschwalt just walks away. The next episode starts with Jushiro's power starting to fizzle out, while Yhwach rests on his throne. Uryu is then met by Haschwalt, who has Yhwach's eyes right now since Yhwach is resting, and Haschwalt insinuates he has seen the future, and that Uryu will betray them. Meanwhile, Soifon, Byakuya, Urahara, Nobara, Shinji, Rukia, and Momo are heading towards Yhwach when they're blocked off by Gerard Valkyrie. That is when Renji shows up saying he'll fight Gerard. Yeah, Renji was healed by Hachigen, and Hiyori mentioned that this wound didn't look like Uryu meant to kill him. Maybe he's on our side after all. Meanwhile, Nakhlevar has Ichigo incapacitated, and he does the same to Chad and Orihime by making spirit energy poisonous to them. It's looking bad, but that is when Yoruichi shows up. She starts fighting Nakhlevar, and we're given a reminder of just how much of a badass she is.
Shunko! Raijin Senkei!
Meanwhile, it looks like Gerard has been defeated by Renji and the others. Byakuya applies the brutal finishing touches, and they head on, when the earth starts shaking. Jushiro's run out of power, and now the three worlds are coming apart at the seams. This is bad. Ichigo, Orihime, and Chad heal up before heading onwards. Nakhlevar is still alive, and Yoruichi gets ready for the fight when her brother Yushiro shows up. He turns into a crying mess in front of his sister before he unleashes a barrage on Nakhlevar. Kid's got moves! While that's happening, it turns out Gerard isn't dead. In fact, he's a giant now. Yeah, Gerard's powers let him use any damage he's taken as an increase in power and size, and he's never been this big before. He proceeds to attack the Soul Reapers, sending each one of them flying. Uh-oh. Meanwhile, Nakhlevar is still alive, and now that he's consumed Yushiro's spiritual pressure, he's immune to Yushiro's attacks. He hits Yushiro with 3 arrows before telling Yoruichi to hurry up. She'll be cooked if she doesn't kill him soon. Meanwhile, Haschwalth tells Uryu it's time to prove he's not a traitor before attacking Uryu. Uryu dodges and lands outside, right in front of Ichigo. While Uryu and Ichigo come face to face, their dads meet in the graveyard. It looks like Isshin and Ryuken are joining this battle. The last episode of Season 3 starts with Uryu attacking Ichigo under Haschwalth's orders, and Ichigo asks him again, why? We then see what Uryu read in his grandpa's notebook. Turns out he didn't believe Yhwach was the savior of Quincy's, and he wanted to protect the earth and his loved ones, and Uryu is doing the same. All this has been a deception to get close to Yhwach and take him down. Even him fighting Ichigo right now is an act, and he's putting up one hell of a performance. Meanwhile, Yoruichi is still fighting Nakhlevar, while also taking care of her brother. We then see Riruka and Yukio head down to the Soul Society. We catch a glimpse of the pieces of Lige wreaking havoc before they're cut down by Izuru Kyura. How is he still alive? I thought Baz B killed him. Meanwhile, Uryu finally tells Ichigo the truth. He's been playing double agent. He tells Ichigo and the others to escape back to Earth, but Haschwalth shows up saying he's already destroyed that exit. He can see everything. So, new plan. Ichigo goes and kills Yhwach while he's sleeping. Uryu stays to fight Haschwalth, and Haschwalth says Uryu's friends are gonna die. So, he's surprised to see that Uryu is hopeful. And Uryu says that Haschwalth's surprise means he didn't know that Uryu would be hopeful, which means they still have a chance. While Isshin and Ryuken make it to the royal palace, Lil Toto and Giselle fail to kill a sleeping Yhwach. This guy's a monster even when he's asleep. And that is where the season ends. That was our recap of Bleach 1000-Year Blood War. While we all wait for the new season to drop, feel free to click the link on screen to watch another one of my videos. But in the meantime, peace!